Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, May 4th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. South Korea reports 541 new COVID-19 cases Tuesday, a day before the National Children's Day holiday. Authorities are on high alert over a possible surge in infections, as many are expected to hold family gatherings. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called on North Korea to decide whether it wants to engage diplomatically to achieve denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. In South Korea's consumer prices in April saw the biggest jump in nearly 4 years due to a sharp increase in the price of agricultural, livestock, and fisheries products. Today, we begin with the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea. The nation reported 541 new infections Tuesday, rising back above the 500 mark. Concerns over another massive spread have been mounting over the past weeks, especially this week, as it includes nationally celebrated Children's Day and Parents' Day. For more on this, we have Min Soo-kyun on the line for us. Soo-kyun, can you briefly tell us on the latest numbers?
Sure. South Korea on Tuesday reported 541 new COVID-19 cases. Of the new cases, 514 were locally transmitted and 27 were from overseas. This now brings the country's total number of cases to over 124,000. The country also added 6 more deaths, raising the death toll to 1,840. So far, almost 3.5 million people have received their first shots of a COVID-19 vaccine since the country started its vaccination program in late February. Less than 2 million people have been given the AstraZeneca vaccine, while 1.6 million have received Pfizer's. To achieve herd immunity by November, the country aims to vaccinate 12 million people by the end of June. There are still concerns over a potential rise in new cases, with several holidays this month, starting with Children's Day tomorrow, Parents' Day over the weekend, and Buddha's birthday on the 19th. Health officials are calling on the public to abide by virus prevention measures, especially urging them to avoid social and family gatherings.
The South Korean government has also announced details to bring back more than 300 South Korean nationals from India, which is struggling with the pandemic. So can I hear some are arriving today?
That's right, Mo-gyan. About 173 people will soon arrive at Incheon International Airport today at around 11:45 a.m. Korean time. Another 211 nationals will return on Friday. They will all be required to get a PCR test within 72 hours of boarding and, of course, upon their arrival. They must also self-isolate for 2 weeks and be tested at least 3 times before being released from quarantine. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Mo-gyan.
Thank you for the updates, Can we appreciate it. South Korea will begin inoculating people aged between 60 to 64 next month. This will bring the government closer to vaccinating 13 million people by the end of the first half of the year, 1 million more than initially planned. Kim Do-yeon has the updates.
According to the announcement made on Monday, South Korea is going to be inoculating people between the ages of 60 and 64 next month. The initial plan for the first half of the year, released last month, was to inoculate people 65 to 74. Now, with the expansion, a total of 8.9 million people in this age group will be getting the AstraZeneca vaccine. Specifically, seniors aged 65 to 74 will start receiving their shots on the 27th of this month, and people aged 60 to 64 on the 7th of next month.
This plan takes into account the higher rate of fatalities and critical cases of the disease among people 60 and older. After easily achieving the initial goal of 12 million for the first half, we will adjust and execute the plan to administer more so we can reach 13 million.
Also included in the first half this year are people who deal with young children, such as caretakers and teachers of kids in grade 2 and below. Doses of Pfizer will be given to essential workers and military personnel, who together total around 640,000 people. All this will be achieved using the additional supplies due to reach South Korea soon, despite the apparent shortage going on right now. First, the plan is to give second doses to some 1.3 million people by the 3rd week of May, and then move to expanding first doses. Supplies for those people, according to the announcement, have been secured. From May 14th to the first week of June, nearly 9 million doses are due to arrive in South Korea, imported directly and from the COVAX facility. As for Pfizer, 5 million doses will arrive in weekly batches until June. As of Monday midnight, a total of 3.4 million people in the country have received at least their first dose, which represents 6.6% of the whole population. Slightly more than half of them got AstraZeneca, while the remainder were given Pfizer. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization says the number of global COVID-19 virus cases reported in the last 2 weeks has surpassed the number of cases reported in the first 6 months of the pandemic. Among the hardest hit countries, India has seen its hospitals run out of oxygen. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
The last 2 weeks has seen more COVID-19 cases worldwide than the first 6 months of the pandemic. According to the WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus on Monday, India and Brazil accounted for more than half of last week's cases. But there are many other countries across the globe facing a very fragile situation. The UN Health Agency is providing equipment and supplies, including oxygen concentrators, to India, while the WHO Foundation is also raising funds to support the need for oxygen and related supplies worldwide. And the situation continues to be dire in India due to the lack of oxygen supplies, as more and more patients in the country are dying daily due to a collapse in the medical system. According to media reports, 24 people have died at a hospital in India's southern state in a span of 24 hours due to the oxygen shortage. However, health officials say while there had been issues with oxygen supplies, not all deaths were due to the oxygen shortage, and added investigations were ongoing. India continues to see its country ravaged by the second wave of the outbreak, reporting over 368,000 cases on Monday. Meanwhile, over in the United States, despite more than half of the adults in the country having been vaccinated with at least one dose, daily vaccination rates are slipping. According to public health experts, the herd immunity threshold is currently not attainable, at least not in the foreseeable future, or perhaps not ever. They added that instead, the virus will most likely become a manageable threat that will continue to spread for years to come, still causing hospitalizations and deaths, but in much smaller numbers. One thing's for sure, the virus is mutating too quickly, and new variants are spreading faster than the vaccination process, making herd immunity unlikely anytime soon. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Israel on Monday reported its first cases of the Brazil and Chile variants of COVID-19 among travelers entering the country. According to Israel's health ministry, 2 cases of the Brazilian variant and a single case of the Chilean strain were detected. 2 adults and a baby were found to be carrying the virus, despite the adults having been vaccinated prior to entry. On the same day, another 19 travelers were found to have the Indian variant, bringing the total number of variant cases in Israel to 60. People in South Korea can now check by themselves at home whether or not they contracted the COVID-19. The self-test kits are not as reliable as PCR tests, but they are expected to help stave off a potential 4th wave. Han Sung explains.
Local drugstores throughout South Korea now stock COVID-19 self-test kits, available for purchase without a prescription.
We've had a lot of phone calls asking whether the kits are in, so quite a few people will stop by to get theirs in the afternoon.
3 kinds have been granted conditional approval for use from the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety. SD Biosensors kit has been on sale both in pharmacies and online since last Thursday at about $14 for a pack of 2. It's being distributed nationwide by Hanmi Pharmaceuticals, and the instructions for use are simple. First, insert the swab about 1.5 centimeters up your nose and swab your nostrils 10 times each. Then place your sample into the solution tube and rotate it 10 times. Next, close the tube with the nozzle cap and finally squeeze 4 drops of your sample into the circular opening on the device. 15 to 30 minutes later, either 1 or 2 lines will show up, 1 meaning negative and 2 positive. The results aren't always accurate though, especially for people who are asymptomatic, meaning it's possible to get a false negative. And those who test positive are required to visit screening centers and undergo a PCR test. Health authorities say the kits should only be used as a supplementary diagnosis method for those with respiratory symptoms who are unable to get a proper PCR test. But Korea is looking to put them to wide use with cluster infections still popping up nationwide. The one developed by Humasys will be sold at convenience stores around the country starting Friday. Meanwhile, the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education plans to introduce self-test kits to schools with sports teams or with dormitories of more than 100 students. 한성우, Arirang News.
Foreign ministers from around the world are gathering at the G7 Foreign and Development Ministers meeting in London today. The two-day in-person meeting is the first of its kind in almost 2 years due to COVID-19. Among the invited nations this year are South Korea, India, South Africa, Brunei, representing ASEAN. It's South Korea's first time to receive an invite to the G7 meeting. Leaders are due to discuss geopolitical issues to defend democracy, freedom, and human rights. Relationships with Russia, China, and Iran, turmoil in Myanmar and Syria, as well as vaccines, climate change, and gender equality are also set to be on the agenda. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on North Korea to decide whether it wants to engage diplomatically to achieve denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. Meeting with top diplomats from G7 countries, Blinken also underscored the importance of a joint effort in dealing with the regime. Our Kim Hyo-san reports.
America's top diplomat explained that the diplomatic ball is now in North Korea's court, stressing that the Biden administration is focusing on a practical approach that will explore diplomacy with the regime.
I hope that North Korea will take the opportunity to engage diplomatically and to see if there are ways to move forward toward the objective of complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And so we'll look to see not only what North Korea says, but what it actually does in the coming days and months. But we have, I think, a very clear policy that centers on diplomacy, and it is, I think, up to North Korea to decide whether it wants to engage or not on that basis.
The remarks during a joint press conference Monday with his British counterpart in London, where he's attending the G7 Foreign and Development Ministers meeting, come after Pyongyang threatened Washington that it will face a, quote, worse and worse crisis. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also underscored the need for regional cooperation in dealing with the North in his bilateral meeting with South Korean Foreign Minister Chung Eui-yong, held on the sidelines of the G7 talks. The two allies discussed the conclusion of Washington's extensive North Korea policy review, which Chung welcomed. Following the meeting, Seoul's top diplomat told Yonhap News Agency that the two allies will exchange more views during trilateral talks between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S., likely to be held on Wednesday. Chung is currently taking part in the G7 meeting as a special guest, along with ministers from Australia, India, South Africa, and Brunei. Meanwhile, Blinken also sat down with a Japanese counterpart and again stressed the importance of regional cooperation to denuclearize North Korea. The two foreign ministers shared concerns about the North nuclear and ballistic missile programs, while reaffirming their commitment to tackling the issue through trilateral cooperation, also involving Seoul. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
On China, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. will stand up to any country attempting to challenge, undermine, or erode the international rules-based order, including Beijing. Blinken also told reporters it was not the U.S. purpose to contain China or hold China down. He made the comments at a joint press conference with British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who said the U.S. and UK had to stand up for their values, holding Beijing to the commitments that they have made, both in relation to Hong Kong and wider commitments. Raab also stressed the need to work with China in a sensible and positive manner. Shifting focus, South Korea's consumer prices in April saw the biggest jump in almost 4 years. For more, we have our Kim Sang-min on the line for us. Sang-min, walk us through the numbers.
Morgan, consumer prices jumped 2.3% in April compared to a year earlier, the biggest rise since August 2017. According to Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the consumer price index stood at 107.39 last month. The increase was due largely in part to a sharp rise in the prices of agricultural, livestock, and fisheries products following the poor harvest and spiking global oil prices. Agricultural, livestock, and fisheries product prices increased by 13.1%, seeing double-digit on-year price hikes for 4 straight months. Of these, agricultural products rose more than 18%, especially green onions, which are 4 times more expensive than a year ago. Apples and rice prices also saw huge inflation. The steep rise in global oil prices was also a huge contributor to the monthly gain, pushing up the prices of industrial goods by 2.3%. Gasoline prices were up almost 14%. Service prices nudged higher as well, up 1.3% for the year, and part of that was the cost of dining out, which shot up 1.9%. House prices were 1.2% higher than a year ago, the highest jump in more than 3 years. That's all I have for now. I'll be back with more updates. Back to you, Morgan.
Thank you. That was our Kim Sang-min reporting. The U.S. has started working to reunite migrant families separated under the previous Trump administration's immigration policies. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said on Monday that 4 migrant parents who were separated from their children will return to the U.S. this week. He said that many more would follow and acknowledged the importance of providing families with the stability and resources they need to heal. According to the Department of Homeland Security, more than 1,000 families remain separated after the parents were deported mostly to Central America. The Iranian Foreign Ministry flatly denied local media reports that prisoner swap deals have been reached with the U.S. and Britain. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the reports cannot be confirmed, especially as a political rift has widened ahead of the country's presidential elections slated for next month. He also added that Tehran continues to stand by its demand to unfreeze assets blocked in several countries due to the sanctions imposed by Washington in 2018. The statement comes as Iran's state television reported Sunday that Tehran has reached an agreement with the U.S. to swap prisoners in exchange for the release of frozen Iranian oil funds worth $7 billion. Billionaire Bill Gates and his wife Melinda Gates have said that they have made the decision to end their 27-year marriage. In a joint statement on Monday, the two said that the decision was made after a great deal of thought and work on their relationship. The couple have agreed to continue to work together at their nonprofit Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, launched in the year 2000. The financial details of their divorce have not been revealed. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, people are shopping online more than ever, resulting in more waste from packaging. Due to the severity of the situation, South Korea's logistics industry is looking for new ways to reduce the amount of waste. Kim Chung-ha has more.
This is a packaging site for one of Korea's biggest online bookstores. Usually, when we order books online, boxes are much bigger than they need to be, meaning bookstores need to use bubble wrap or plastic packaging to fill the space. This creates more plastic waste. But this machine automatically customizes the boxes to fit the books perfectly.
We have reduced the amount of plastic being used by about 40%. We will expand our eco-friendly shipping system.
With a whopping increase in deliveries due to the pandemic, excess trash is becoming a huge issue. With the problem too big to ignore, online retailers as well as logistics companies are trying to go green. More companies have switched to reusable boxes when delivering fresh produce. And there are some that have changed their plastic packaging to 100% paper. A local cosmetics company is now using paper wrapping and tape instead of plastic and styrofoam.
We are now using eco-friendly packaging that can be recycled to reduce the amount of delivery waste.
This comes as ESG, or the environmental, social, and governance criteria for companies, is becoming increasingly important. Consumers have shown that they prefer companies which are more socially and environmentally responsible. However, even with these efforts, the amount of plastic waste increased by more than 20% last year in South Korea, showing that much more needs to be done. Kim Chong-ah, Arirang News.
Good morning. Spring weather is surely variable. Clear blue skies to rainy and windy conditions in just one day. Rain that began in the capital region will spread to the entire country by late this afternoon. And the capital region will receive 20 to 60 millimeters of somewhat heavy rainfall, but torrential showers for south of Jeju Island with a preliminary heavy rain advisory. And a strong wind advisory may even be issued on Jeju Island. Meanwhile, regions along the coast are under a preliminary strong wind advisory as well. Winds will be gusty at up to 20 to 25 meters per second today. Daily highs will be similar to a couple of notches lower today, but winds will make it feel a lot chillier. Seoul and Chuncheon will be getting up to 19 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Rain should let up early dawn tomorrow, which is Children's Day, also Ipha, the beginning of summer, according to seasonal indicators. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.